So last night I was scrolling through flightsim.to and I saw an Airbus A350 for Microsoft Flight Simulator. I'll give you a hint, it's not very good, but in today's video I'll be taking a fun look at it, so let's get right into it. Okay, so hello everyone, welcome to the simulator. You can see I've got it installed. First red flag is that this appears in others as opposed to airliners. But to be fair to the dev, it does have a few liveries for you to choose. Now this being an FSX convert or conversion, it of course follows the standard trend of having a default Microsoft Flight Simulator cockpit. As you can see here, it's using the default A350 one, which is always a shame. Hopefully that improves in the future. Now on the outside, well, you can see this doesn't fit in straight away. Don't get me wrong, in some lighting settings it looks perfectly fine, but getting up close you can notice some inaccuracies and quite a few of them. In fairness to the developer, animations have been ported over quite nicely. Gear comes up, engines are moving, and lights are for the most part in the correct place. Not always, but it's certainly good enough to resemble an A350 at face value, meaning it's perfect if you're working on some cinematics and you want to see this aircraft in the background, and because you've got the default A320 cockpit in there as well, you can fly it about like your average airliner. Of course it's nothing like the real thing, and it does mean we're still awaiting a very good or at least acceptable A350 model, but for the time being this certainly fits in as a placeholder, at least for the somewhat acceptable external model. Now sadly the flight model inside is absolutely terrible. You'll see later on we can land this pretty much on the shortest runways in the world. It takes off at about 80 knots. It's sort of crazy really, makes good fun and certainly something different. I don't even know where they've got this flight model from, as I'm pretty sure that's not the default A320 flight model, but to be honest I haven't flown that aircraft for a while, so who knows. Anyway, we're up in the air. I wasn't even going full power here just because I sort of forgot, I guess, I don't know, the speed sort of cut me off. But this thing wanted to fly at about 60-70 knots, which is just crazy, but good fun. Now I flew about a bit with the A350 and you can see in certain lighting conditions it does look pretty good. Even some of the showcase cameras work, meaning if you set it up correctly and excuse some of the low quality textures, well, it doesn't look too shabby. Now of course it's not going to win any awards for looking nice, but as I said a few minutes ago, if you set this up in the correct conditions it will look pretty good, and therefore is the perfect aircraft for a cinematic placeholder. Even watching my replay back of takeoff, well, you can see just how crazy that flight model is, but to be honest with you, it looks decent, it looks acceptable, and therefore I'm not going to say it's a complete waste of your time to download this. I'm just going to say it is exactly what it says on the tin. This is a Flight SimX conversion, so therefore you should expect nothing less and nothing more. It's conditions like this where the A350 doesn't look too bad unless you get too close. It's sort of, well, your distance of course means a lot of the imperfections blur out. Now coming into landing, this is where the flight model comes to shine. In a bad way, the flight model is really crazy. This thing, well, I don't really know how to land it, to be fair, because I'm sat in an A320 cockpit with a flight model that sort of feels like an A320, but I'm in a much longer aircraft, technically a much heavier aircraft. So landing this is pretty much not impossible, but you're never ever going to have a good landing. That being said, its flight model, as you'll see at the end of this video, definitely allows for some interesting approaches and some interesting landings coming in to some very challenging airports. You can see here we're in the Qatar Airbus livery, which is a pretty cool livery I have to say, and we absolutely smack it into the runway and the aircraft comes to a very quick stop. You can see reverses out there. They were only put out of course on the landing roll, but they seem to have stayed in. Now here we are, we're coming into Saba now, and I'm not even going to say anything. I'm going to let you watch this because this is just mental. So as you can see, a fantastic controlled flight into the runway there. Although it was pretty much a crash, we probably snapped the plane in half. We managed to come to a stop, and now we can turn the aircraft around, ready to take off again. With this aircraft from this runway, with only a little bit of a headwind, did with relative ease. So this is now the perfect short takeoff and landing airliner. What a treat to fly out of Saba. At the end of the day, guys, this is a Flight Sim X conversion. You really do get exactly what it says on the tin. Is that a bad thing? Well, yes and no. I guess we're still waiting for a good A350, or at the very least, an acceptable A350. But if you're like me and want to make some cinematics, well, this is a decent placeholder for the time being. On that note, guys, have a fantastic day. Thank you for watching. I'll see you all very soon. Bye-bye.